Unit 8 retest review. Quick reminder, I say this in every review video, your actual retake is 10 problems that are almost identical to these, right? Different numbers, same skills, so make sure you can do all 10 by yourself independently before you come into retest. Also, I'm going to try and go as quick as I can, so if you do have questions or you just need me to slow down, pause the video, right? Make a note on your paper to ask me about it in class if that's the case. Problem number 1. And by the way, write all answers in simplest form. So that's what we'll be looking for. Problem number 1, find the product, right? And we can see that that means multiplication. So since I've got one term outside parentheses here, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to distribute. And when I distribute, we know that 2 times 5 is 10. It's the x's I feel like give us a little bit of trouble. So let's remember that when we multiply x times x, these exponents, what happens to them? They get added. So 2 plus 2 is 4. 2 times negative 2 is going to be negative 4. And then what about my x's? Looks like I've got 2 and 3. Remember, we're adding these, so I get 5 for my exponent. And then finally, 2x squared times 1, well, anything times 1 is just itself, so it stays positive 2x squared. Now, I do not have any like terms because all these exponents are different, which means that that is my final answer. That's all I got. Now, something crucial you're definitely going to want to know is how to check your answers, because this is not a multiple choice test, right? You got to make sure that what you're turning in is correct. So in y equals, I've typed in the original problem, and I'm going to type in what I think the answer is. Now, I wanted to show this to you guys in case you didn't know how to do the exponents. So 10x, and then to the 4th power to get an exponent, type this little upward arrow pointing looking key, and then I can type in my exponent, click over to get out of there. All right, then I got minus 4x to the 5th. Right, there's my exponent key again. And then on the end I have plus 2x squared. And for squared, this key is nice and easy. All right, now I'm going to check my table. So second graph. And am I right? I am, right? The y1 and y2 columns are matching, which tells me that these two equations are equivalent. These two expressions are equivalent, sorry. Okay, problem 2, here we go. Multiply x squared minus 2x plus 5 and negative 7x. Oh, this is the same exact thing I just did. Only they're giving me a little extra step to set it up. So I'm going to put the negative 7x in the front. I'm going to put it outside x squared minus 2x plus 5. Right, multiply is distribution, so we're going to distribute now. Negative 7x times x squared, well, it's going to stay negative 7. And then x to the power of 2 plus 1 will give me 3. Negative 7x times negative 2x, well, that's going to be a positive 14. And then a little 1 here and a little 1 here will give me the power, x to the power of 2. Right? Again, we're adding up those little ones. Okay? All right. Last but not least, we got negative 7x times 5. Well, that's going to be a negative 35. And don't forget x on the end, right? It comes from here. We don't have 1 on the 5, so it just stays x. No like terms, which means I'm done. This is my final answer. Now, to save time, I'm not going to show you that I'm checking my answer in my calculator, but that is definitely something that you should pause the video and do just to make sure that you know how. Example 3, expand and simplify. This is a test question that was missed a lot, and I think it's because we don't know what to do with this 2 right here. Remember, when you're squaring something, you're multiplying it by itself. So when this says expand, that means we need you to write this as x minus 5 times x minus 5. And then we learned 3 different ways to do this. We learned box method, foiling, and double distribution. Most of my students prefer box, so I'm going to set this up using the box method. All right, these terms go on the outside. So x and negative 5, x and negative 5, and now I'm doing the multiplication inside the box. So x times x, right? X times x is going to give me x squared. Negative 5 times x is going to give me negative 5x. Another x times negative 5 is going to give me negative 5x. And finally, negative 5 times negative 5 is going to give me positive 25. So I've got x squared minus 5x, and a positive 25. To finish my answer, I will combine like terms, which I do have this time. And I'm going to get x squared minus 10x plus 25. Okay? And again, let me remind you that you can easily check your answer here. in y equals, type in the original problem. So type in exactly what you see. We're going to have parentheses x minus 5, and then squared, and underneath we're going to type in what we think is our final answer. So x squared minus 10x and a positive 25. All right, I'm going to check my table here real quick. And I'm right. All the y1s and all the y2s are matching up, so I know that the two expressions are equivalent, right? I have simplified. Problem 4, multiply. All right, this is exactly what we did in this last one, only it didn't start out like this, right? We just can set it up in the box. Here we go. We've got our box here. We've got an x and a positive 9. We've got x and a negative 9. So let's multiply. X times x is x squared. 9 times x is 9x. X times negative 9 is negative 9x. And finally, 9 times negative 9 is negative 81. So let's write out our 4 terms, x squared plus 9x, negative 9x, and a negative 81. We do have like terms, so let's combine those, and we get x squared plus 0x minus 81. Now in this case, since we added up our like terms and got a 0, we don't need to write that, so my final answer will be x squared minus 81. All right, that happened because I had the difference of squares here. Did you guys notice that? All right, a 9 and a negative 9, right? Everything inside is matching except with different signs. Just a little side note. All right, problem 5. Find the area. Find the area. This is not on your formula chart, but you guys should know the area is equal to base times height. So all we have to do is multiply the base times the height. All right, so I'm going to say area equals base times height. So in this case, the base looks like it's 3x minus 2, and the height is 5x minus 3. And you can have these flip-flopped. It doesn't matter which order you do those in. All right. Now it looks like we did in problem numbers 3 and 4, where I can just quickly set up my box. So I've got 3x and a negative 2, 5x and a negative 3. And we're going to fill in our 4 terms in the box. So we've got 3x times 5x is 15x squared, right? Negative 2 times 5x is negative 10x. 3x times negative 3 is negative 9x. And finally, negative 2 times negative 3 is a positive 6. So to finish this problem, let's write out our 4 terms. We had 15x squared minus 10x minus 9x and a positive 6. My like terms right there in the middle, we can add those up and we get 15x squared minus 19x plus 6. Okay, and if you're not sure how to add those up in the middle, you can just type in your calculator negative 10 minus 9, okay, and we get negative 19. That's how I got that middle term. Again, if you want to check in your calculator, put this in y1 and this in y2, and make sure those columns match. Now the back of your test is the reverse box method, right? That's factoring. So on the back of your test, we're going to be factoring. Let's go ahead and look at problem 6. The first step when we factor is to check, do I have like terms? So I've got 5x squared and negative 30x. No, okay, so not like terms, sorry. Do I have a greatest common factor? And in this case, I do. Both of these terms are divisible by 5, so I got to use a 5. And they both have an x, right? So I got to use x. Factoring means we divide out the common factor. So we put 5x outside parentheses and we figure out what's left. Well, 5 divided by 5 is 1, which cancels out. And x squared divided by x is just x. In the next term, the x's cancel. We've got negative 30 divided by 5, which is negative 6. And that's it, right? That's my final answer. And again, just like all these questions, check your answer in your calculator, right? I'm not doing all of them because I don't want this video to last for a half hour, but you guys definitely should. So we've got 5x squared minus 30x. So I'm typing in what we started with originally. And then next one, we're going to type in what we think the answer is. So 5x in parentheses, x minus 6. Then I simply check my table, And we've got matching y1 and y2 columns, so I know that I did it correctly. Problem 7. All right, we've got x squared plus 7x plus 12. Check for our greatest common factor first. They don't all have x, and I've got a 1 and a 7 and a 12. So my GCF is just 1, which means I don't really have one that I can use. So we're going to move on. Okay, now in my previous videos, I showed y'all factoring by grouping. In this video, because, looking at your test, it looks like you struggled with factoring a little bit, I'm going to show you another method for factoring, and this is the box method that we just used on the other side of this paper, but in reverse. And I think it's going to help. Here we go. We start off the process the same way as normal. We still have to look at A times C and B. All right, well, B is easy. That's just my middle term, 7. A times C is 1 times 12. All right, and so that's 12. What I have to do is I have to find two numbers. The two numbers I choose need to multiply to 12, but when I add, give me 7. So make a quick list for 12. How do I multiply and get a 12? Well, 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4, 5 doesn't work, 6 works, but I already have it, right? So we're good. Let's see here. Which of those can I use? They all multiply to 12, but which of them adds up to 7? This one. All right, so I definitely want 3 and 4. And so here's where the new method comes in. We're going to draw a box, and we don't know the outsides like we usually do, right? Like I don't know what goes in parentheses because I don't have parentheses. But I know where some of the stuff goes in the box. I know the x squared term is going to end up here, right? And I know that the constant term, the 12, is going to end up in this spot right here. So I'm going to put those in. Now I have this 7x, and I can't use it twice, so like what do I do in these two boxes I have left? Okay, in those boxes, you guys are going to use the red numbers, the 3 and the 4 that we figured out, right? The 3x and the 4x, these numbers from over here. And now all we have to do to finish is look for greatest common factors. Here's how it works. Okay, I'm going to zoom real close in here. All right, x squared and 4x. What do they have in common? All right, we're looking at just this column. X squared and 4x have an x in common, right? That's their greatest common factor. So we put that right here on the outside. And then we look at my next column. I got a 3x and a 12. Okay, well, they're both divisible by 3. Now, they don't both have x, so I don't use x. And we're done with our columns. Now we look at our rows. X squared and 3x. What do they have in common? Well, they both have x, and that's about it. Okay, so just x. And then here, 4x and 12, what do they have in common? 4x and 12 are both, see, the greatest common factor for those would be 4. And that's how we factor. So we figured out that my two groups that would go along the outside would be x and a positive 4 and x and a positive 3. And that is my factored form. All right, that is my factored form. Again, to check my answer, we would type in the original x squared plus 7x plus 12. And then in the one below it, we would type in what we think the answer is. So we've got parentheses, we're going to type in x plus 4 and x plus 3. And then once you've got these typed in, remember we're just going to go to the table. So we hit second graph, and we see that we're right. All our y1s and y2s are matching. All right, problem number 8. Another factoring problem. Here we go. All right, so we do not have a GCF in all three of these terms except for a 1, which means we can jump straight to the good stuff. So A times C and B. Well, A times C is 6 times negative 2 in this case, so negative 12. And B is just 1. All right, so what multiplies to negative 12 but adds up to a 1? Right? It's got to multiply to this. It's got to add up to this. Oops. Okay, well, let's make a list for 12. We got 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. In order for it to add up to a positive 1, right, since I know one of my terms has to be a negative, we got to keep the bigger terms positive, so these ones have to be the negatives. All right, which of these can I make up to add up to a positive 1? Okay, well, that's going to be negative 3 and positive 4. And so I'm going to make my box, just like the last problem, and let's see if we can remember where everything goes. Okay, the 6x squared goes in this spot right here. The constant, okay, the number on the end, goes in that bottom right box, so we get to put a negative 2 in here. And then we have to pick 2 more numbers. So remember, we don't use the 1x, we don't use b, we break it up and we use negative 3x and a positive 4x. And it doesn't matter, you can switch these into, like this negative 3x could go here, like it doesn't matter, just put them in the 2 boxes. All right, we're almost done, you guys. Find the GCFs here. So I'm going to look at my first column, 6x squared and 4x squared. Both of these numbers, the greatest common factor would be 2, right? 6 and 4 could both be divided by 2, and they both have x, so 2x. And the next one, though, they don't both have x. Can't use that. They don't really have anything in common except for we can just say a 1. If nothing else is in common, say a 1. And since I'm touching a box with a negative, I have to use a negative. All right, now let's look at our rows. 6x squared and negative 3x. Both of those can be divided by 3, and they both have x, so 3x. And don't make this negative, only if the box it's touching is a negative. All right, last row, we got 4x and 2. The great GCF for that row is going to be a 2. All right, and that's it. So my factored form here is going to be 3x and a positive 2, so 3x plus 2. And a 2x and a negative 1, so 2x minus 1. And this is my factored form. Now I'm not going to do it, but if you want to check your answer, put this in y1, this in y2, and make sure those columns match. All right, problem number 9. Yay, multiple choice. Okay, hopefully we look at this and we remember that this is the difference of squares, x squared minus 4, so I need a positive and a negative, right? Negative and a positive term. Let's see here. If we didn't, though, we can check answer choices. All right, you guys, so by hand, okay, we remember that x squared is a perfect square because it's x times x. 4 is a perfect square because it's 2 times 2. And I have a negative, so it's a negative and a positive, right? Because that's how we multiply and get a negative, right? Also, the difference of squares, it always has to be subtracting. So my answer choice would be A. Let's show you really quickly in the calculator here on this one, because I want to remind you that if you forget how to do this, if you have multiple choice, like there's no excuse for getting this one wrong. So I'm going to type this in y equals, and I'm going to type in first option A, which we know is the correct answer, hopefully, right? So if I type in x minus 2 and x plus 2, what do I expect to see? Well, I expect to see my y columns matching. And they are, so I should know that's the right answer. But just to show you, what if I had checked this option B? And B looks like both of them are negatives or minus signs. So look when I check my table now. Do you see how these numbers are not matching these numbers? That's how you're supposed to know that this is not the right answer, right? And we know this one's not it either. Your answer is A. Okay, finally, answer question, number 10. The length of a rectangular tabletop is x minus 5, and its area is x squared minus 11x plus 30. What is the width of the tabletop? Well, let's talk about this. Area, we know is base times height, or in this case, length times width. So let's think about this. They tell us the length is x minus 5. So x minus 5 times the width, which we don't know what it is, should give us this area, x squared minus 11x plus 30. All right, well, you guys just really think about this here. X times what will give me x squared? Right, because we know that these two terms produce this term. It's just got to be x. Also, all of these just have x right here, right? So basically, what number goes in this spot to give us my right answer? Well, I want you guys to notice that I already have a negative 5, right? So a negative 5 times what will give me this positive 30? Because we know the number on the end is what we multiply to get. Well, a negative 5 times a negative 6 will give me that positive 30. So my answer choice here should be C. Okay, now another really easy way to check your answer in this case, go to your y equals, go ahead and type in the whole trinomial at the end there. So we're going to type in x squared minus 11x plus 30. And I'm going to type in this next one, the x minus 5 that I was given. And if I wanted to check option A, like maybe I think it's A, then I would do another parentheses and I would put x minus 15 in there, right? Because we'd have to multiply the answer choice with the x minus 5. And let's see if this is the right answer. Okay, no, right? These are not matching up, so you know that's not what you would use. And so then maybe by the time you got to answer choice C, which we know is the right answer, right? X minus 5 times x minus 6. Look at what we get in our table. Everything is matching up, all right? So x minus 6 was this missing piece, and you got it just kind of by filling in the blank, figuring out what could give you this positive 30. All right, this was a long video, you guys. This retest, your calculator is going to be your best friend to check your answers. Just remember, distribution and factoring are opposites. You can use the box method for both. And if you need help before the test, you can still ask questions about this review. Just come and talk to your teacher.